Good afternoon. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with James Rowe, the CEO of OTOjOY. Good afternoon, James.
Good afternoon, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. So to start off, can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Sure. So I started out actually as a speech and language pathologist a long time ago, it feels like now. I worked with adults who acquired communication disabilities. So a lot of people who had had a stroke or some other form of traumatic brain injury, and then people maybe living with degenerative disorders like ALS or Parkinson's disease. And typically they came to me when natural speech was no longer an option for them. And so I specialized in a field called alternative communication. My job was to figure out usually technology, but an alternative means of communicating for those individuals. That took me to a company, a US-based company, a Pittsburgh-based company, actually, who made high-tech alternative communication devices, a company called Dynavox. I ended up spending probably about 15 years working in alternative communication, first with Dynavox, then with a British company called Toby Churchill, and then moved from communication out, speech, to communication in, hearing. And I spent 4 years working for the world's biggest non-profit, an organization called Action on Hearing Loss, running all of their commercial activities in the UK. And about 2.5 years ago, I met Thomas, who was the founder of OTOjOY, and I've been with OTOjOY now for 2 years. So that's me.
Wow, very interesting. So what has been your experience with remote employment, both as an employee and an employer?
As an employee, I spent probably the first 9 years of my career working in sales and managed a territory. So have worked remotely, I would think, all of my career, other than the short time I spent actually practicing speech pathology in a hospital. I haven't really had what you might describe as a traditional office job. So as an employee, I've worked remotely for the best part of 20 years. And actually, I think prefer it. I quite enjoy the freedom it brings. And I don't know, maybe it's just because I've spent so long doing it, but it's certainly now a preference. And as an employer, I've hired remote workers ever since I started managing people. So as a sales manager early in my career, my team were all remote, all working in different parts of the country. And then later I managed international partners. So I had teams that were working overseas. And even more recently with OTOjOY, we have a number of people who work for us either on a contract basis or on a part-time basis who aren't office-based. And they're working for us all over the world. So we do have teams that are in the US, but we also work with teams based in India who take care of our website. And then others in other locations around the world that support us in a variety of different functions. So remote working has been an integral part of my career, I guess.
And you yourself are remote now, right? You work for a U.S. company and you're not in the U.S.
That's right. So just as I was about to get the final signatures on my immigration paperwork, coronavirus struck and the US Embassy in London closed. And I happen to still be in Cambridge, which is where I live. And so now until the embassy reopens, I'm not able to make that final move over to Arizona. Even if I wanted to travel to the US at the moment, I couldn't because the US still has its borders shut to the UK and a number of other countries. So here I am working remotely, running an American company from Cambridge.
Wow, so I'm assuming you work longer nights, right? Because that's the time difference, right?
That's right. I've shifted my schedule a little bit. So it's unusual for me to start work now before midday. And then it's pretty usual for me still to be working kind of 9 or 10 o'clock at night here. So that takes me through until, 2 o'clock in the afternoon Pacific time, which is where Arizona is at the moment.
Oh, very cool.
So I'm often working when it's dark outside, which is fine.
Yeah. So what do you think is the future of remote employment, and what do you think could be done differently to make it more effective?
You know, it's funny. I was having this conversation with a colleague earlier today. He's been office based his entire career. So this is his first experience now that we're in lockdown of working from home, working remotely. And it's interesting because he said, I think his perception of remote working had changed in the last maybe 10 or 12 weeks. Whereas before, he found it really difficult to understand how he might be able to get his job done, how he might be able to manage the teams that he's managing remotely. And so has therefore been at least a little bit adverse to kind of taking a step into that world previously, because we went into lockdown here in the UK, what is now 12 weeks ago, maybe 13 weeks ago, and everybody has been almost forced to work remotely, him included. He said he's realized that actually some of the anxiety around making that leap, some of the fears that he had just weren't founded at all. And I think, you know, that's partly, Mark, because we have all of the technology that we need completely at our disposal these days.
Mhm.
So, you know, at OTOjOY, we use Slack, for example, for most of our non-verbal communication needs. All of the software that the company uses is cloud-based, so all I need is an internet connection and my laptop, and I have access to everything that the company runs on. You and we're having this conversation on Zoom as our 30 million subscribing customers, or whatever the crazy number is
Mhm.
now. And, you know, you're in San Francisco and I'm 6,000 miles away in the UK, and it's as if we were in the same room together. And so, I don't know, maybe early on in my career, if I go back 20 years, um, a lot of the technology wasn't in place to make it easy. And so I wasn't, as a salesperson then, really able to keep up even with the team that was around me in the UK, unless I was, you know, somewhere that had a good internet connection, which 20 years ago really wasn't
Mhm.
very many places. It was all done by phone. Today, the world's a different place, and so, you know, even friends like the colleague that I spoke to earlier today, who've always felt some anxiety around the fact that doing the work that they do has to be done in an office, I think has fallen away a bit over the last 12 weeks. So what does that mean for the future of remote working? I think it's only going to increase. I think a lot of organizations will have realized that the work doesn't stop even if they don't have lots of people gathered in the same location. And so although there already is quite a lot of remote working, I think the amount that we'll see will increase even more once the world starts to get back to, you know, normal. I hate that word because what's normal, but how
Sure.
it was before, I guess.
Yeah. Or get back to some semblance of normal, we'll say. And
Right,
what's interesting, I've
right.
talked to a lot of people about this, and a lot of people were surprised that they found they were more effective working remotely. And a lot of it depends upon your home situation. If you have kids under 5, it's harder to work from home. But if you have older kids, right, that are, self-sufficient, it's a lot easier, and you gain a lot of time back just from not commuting.
That's right. And I think the other thing is that when you're in an office environment, so much of your time is spent having, I guess, unnecessary conversations. And
Hmm.
there's good and bad in that. I think one of the things that a lot of people are missing at the moment is some of that human interaction that we are so used to having.
Hmm.
And so I find it hard to imagine a future where remote working is done by everybody. That becomes the
Right.
new normal. I don't think that will be the case at all. I think it's still important that there are touch points for us to have with colleagues that we work with. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think provided you've got the right sort of home environment to be able to work remotely, then maybe what we'll see is that people will choose to spend, um, you know, more time working from home. If they're not doing any at the moment, maybe they'll do even just a day a week or 2 days a week. Or for
Hmm.
those that have done a day in the past, maybe they've realized that actually they could be doing this 3 or 4 days a week, and then only going into the office maybe once a week for that absolutely necessary face-to-face meetings that they need to have with their colleagues. Um, but yeah, I mean, provided your home environment's okay, I can't see really what the barriers are to being able to work from home, at least in the West.
Right. And depending upon your job, obviously, but especially technical people, right? They certainly can do a
Sure,
lot of their work remotely. So
absolutely.
What is the story behind OTOjOY? What is your product? Who's your target audience? All those things.
Sure. So OTOjOY installs something called hearing loops into public venues, and I'll explain a bit more about that technology in a minute. OTOjOY was founded 8 years ago by a chap called Thomas Kaufman. He was doing a master's degree at the University of California, Santa Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always been a bit of a problem solver, a bit of a tinkerer. And friends over dinner one night were asking him about the earplugs that he often wore in the physics lab. And he'd had custom earplugs made to drown out the noise of the lab when it was noisy, but that still let some sound in so that he could have conversations with people that were close to him. And he wanted, a lot of people didn't know that that type of technology existed. And so friends encouraged him to start a business where he could supply those open earbuds or earplugs. So he did. He started doing that. I'm not entirely sure how that transitioned into the world of hearing loss, but I think he learned about hearing loop technology from colleagues at the Hearing Loss Association of America. They knew about the work he was doing with custom earplugs. They started having conversations with him about hearing loops. And that was when OTOjOY decided to make the transition into doing what it is today. So for people that wear hearing aids, inside their hearing aid is a little device called a telecoil. And it was in there originally so that people that wore hearing aids could have better conversations on landline telephones. They would hold their landline telephone up to their ear, and there was a little device in the phone that would then connect wirelessly with the little device in their hearing aid, and that would amplify the conversation over the phone. Because Thomas was a physicist, he knew that if you took that coil that was inside the telephone and made it much bigger, put it around the perimeter of a room, you'd be able to send the sound from the room directly to the hearing aid. So our technology, the hearing loop, gets fitted. I'll give you one example that's probably easiest. We fit a lot of churches. So we lay the hearing loop under the carpet in a church. That then gets connected to the sound system in the church so that when the pastor is talking through the microphone, the sound from the microphone goes directly into the person's hearing aids. Without that technology, people with hearing aids are having to listen to this awful cacophony of sound because the hearing aid is amplifying everything around them. People coughing, shuffling in their seats, people walking down the steps, children crying. So it's very difficult if you wear hearing aids to be able to pick out the sound that you actually want to listen to. So put a hearing loop in the venue, click your hearing aid into the telecoil setting, and it's exactly the same as putting on a pair of noise cancelling headphones. Now, the only thing I'm listening to is the sound from the microphone, and all of the other sound, all of the coughing and the babies crying and the shuffling of feet, all of that is just taken away. So people that wear hearing aids get this beautiful, clear sound directly to their hearing aids. And it's interesting because when we talk to people that wear hearing aids, what they'll tell us is that because it gets so difficult listening in busy environments, they stop going. It's easier just to stop going rather than try. It's exhausting trying to listen. So they stop going to the theatre, they stop going to concert venues, they stop going to church, they stop going to council meetings, anywhere that they would have gone previously that is now such an uncomfortable listening environment, and they just withdraw. Which of course has massive social implications. So although we think of ourselves as a technology company, we also like to think that what we're really doing with our technology is helping people socialize again. It means that they're able to go back into those places that they just couldn't bear anymore and suddenly have access to this crystal clear audio. So that's what OTOjOY does.
Wow, that's great. Just out of curiosity, does let's just use a church, if they install your loop, is there something that they like a sign or something that they can put on that says, "Hey, we have the loop"?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There is. So there is a globally recognized, standardized hearing loop symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So we put those onto signs in a number of different locations in the venue. And those signs are in any looped venue anywhere in the world. And you don't need a special bit of technology in your hearing aid to listen through an OTOJOY loop, for example. Your hearing aid will let you listen to loops, any loop installed by anybody all around the world. So all people with hearing aids have to do is look out for the sign, then they know the venue's looped, and hey presto, they get a really good audio experience.
Cool. And is there like a website that people can go to find out if a particular venue is looped?
There is actually. So loopfinder.com will give you a really good idea of the venues that are looped local to you. Just type in your city, your zip code, and you'll be able to see what's looped locally.
Oh, that's great. So how did you incorporate the idea of remote at your company? Especially the fact, I mean, think about it, you're in another country and you haven't been able to come to the US. So how did that all take place?
Right. So one of the companies that I was running at Action on Hearing Loss was a hearing loop installation company. And although the technology is reasonably new in the US, Thomas was one of only 2 companies really that started doing this 7 or 8 years ago in the US. Across Europe, hearing loops have been installed ever since the end of the Second World War. They're ubiquitous here, mostly because they are legislated in Europe. So it's a legal requirement. If you have a venue where the public gather, then you have to have a hearing loop for people that wear hearing aids. And Thomas was looking for somebody who had experience of hearing loops, who could take over the running of the business for him, while he then moved into a technology role. He's now our chief technology officer. And he'd tell you himself, he's much better suited to that than he ever was trying to run the business. So yeah, we met at a conference, and I don't think it really mattered to Thomas where the person was located that he brought into his business. He just knew he needed somebody with experience. Because it was new in the US, there weren't really a lot of people with that experience who were already in the US. So actually, we've been working together now for the last 18 months, might even be coming up to nearly 2 years. And for that whole time, although I visited Phoenix a lot, or Scottsdale, which is where OTOjOY's based, it's only ever for 2 weeks here or there. Most of the time, I've been running this business from my base in Cambridge, and it works. It works just fine, actually.
Yeah,
we have teams of installers. So the guys that put the hearing loops in are locally based in the US. At the moment, the company covers California and Arizona, although we will do work all over the US if we're asked. So we've done projects in Florida, for example, and Texas. But primarily we serve California and Arizona. And then the installers that we work with are local. So there's a very small team that works from the office in Scottsdale. Most of the people that work with us are local to the big metropolitan areas that we serve. So to be honest, whether I'm based here or in Scottsdale or in Bali, I don't think it would matter. I mean, Bali would be nice. I haven't really thought about that. Why not? It wouldn't really matter because the teams aren't in the office anyway. So a lot of the people that I'm managing or working with are all over those 2 states. So it works well.
Well, that's great. And it's funny, just another like off the topic question. When I saw the name of your company, the first thing I thought of was Ode to Joy. Is there any correlation there?
Yep. It was a little play on words. So a lot of people say it sounds like Ode to Joy, which of course is one of Beethoven's most famous pieces, one of Thomas's favorites. As well as being a physicist, Thomas was hugely into music. I think he spent I think he misspent a lot of his youth DJing in underground nightclubs in Germany. He's originally from Germany, Thomas is. And so hugely into music, big Beethoven fan. He has a huge portrait of Beethoven in his living room. And so Ode, trying to find how he could make a play on words with Ode to Joy was great. And then Otto, the Otto at the front of OTOjOY, the OTO, that's Greek for ear. So it's all connected.
Oh, really?
So the joy, it's the joy of hearing, I guess. If you were to directly translate that Oto at the front, then you get the joy of hearing.
Very interesting. So,
yeah.
I will go back on topic now.
Sure.
I just thought that's the first thing I thought of when I saw the name. So I guess it must work.
It works. Well done. That's great.
And we've talked about the pandemic a little, which, everybody back about mid-March, basically the whole world had to go remote. Your company already was mainly remote, but did that cause any roadblocks or challenges that you weren't quite ready for?
Absolutely. We were right up until the beginning of March, we were installing on average 2 hearing loops a week across a variety of locations. At the beginning of March, all of our customers, because we're installing into large public venues, all of our customers in California, and then about 2 weeks later in Arizona, were closed by the state. So all of the projects that we had in our pipeline were, well, best case, they were postponed. And in some cases, customers told us, we have no idea the impact that this will have on our business. So we're going to have to let you know if we can put this project back on schedule. And for 6 weeks, we traded with 0 revenue. So it got a little scary for a while. Good news is we've been trading for a long time. We're a resilient company. We have good reserves, all of that. So, financially we were fine, but I think we were more concerned for what that meant for the future of our customers. And, if you're a small independent movie theater, for example, and now suddenly you have no footfall into your venue, how long do you last before you have to close your doors permanently? That's a real problem. So if we were scheduled, for example, to fit into an independent movie theater, which is common for us, well, that wasn't going to happen. And nobody really knew when we'd be able to get back in. So we sat down as a team and thought about, as everybody did, as businesses all over the world must have done, what do we do next? And for us, Thomas and I felt really strongly together that we needed to make sure that we were doing our bit, I guess. We were playing our part, that we were civically responsible. And so that meant that as a company, we didn't want to try and find ways around the pandemic. We wanted to make sure that we were supporting our customers best that we could, recognizing that it would likely be some time before we'd be able to put their projects on schedule. So rule number 1 in a crisis is communicate, which is, I guess, ironic given that that's how I've spent my entire career, working in communication. So we reached out to our customers, let them know that we were there if we needed them. We recognized that they would be going through difficult times just as we were, and that there was no rush. Just stay in touch, let us know what we can do to help. And then meanwhile, Thomas worked with his team of installers to make sure that we were building new coronavirus safe installation protocols, so that if there were at some point in the future venues that wanted us to install, that we would have a new set of working protocols that meant that we could still do the installation, but inside of any of the new regulations around the coronavirus. And that means some personal protective equipment. It means doing some of the installation activity in series, where previously we would have done it in parallel, so that you don't have 2 or 3 or 4 people working in the same area of the building at the same time. And then kind of slowly but surely, venues reached out to us. They'd had a chance, I think, through that 6 weeks to think about what the world was going to look like in the future. And for some of our customers, it actually made sense for them to get some of their capital expenditure project work done while they were closed. So for some of our customers, we've been able to go in while the venue is closed, and install the infrastructure so that when they're able to reopen to the public, that technology will be newly installed. For other customers, there are still some financial concerns. They're having to think really hard about whether they can still afford a project like ours, or whether they're going to have to reallocate that budget. So yeah, for some customers, it really was just 6, 7, 8 weeks before we were back and installing for them. And for others, we're still waiting for them to figure out what their timeline looks like for us to be able to go in and work on that installation for them. So yeah, I think March was probably one of the weirdest months of my career so far, trying to work out the right way to be able to keep the business viable, although I was less worried about that. It was more, how do I make sure that I'm doing the best job by our customers? And also, how am I doing the best job by our teams so that I'm not putting anybody in danger, I guess, at risk.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm the team's great. They've worked so hard, pulled together, been really willing to think really creatively about what needs to happen differently in the future to get us to the point we're at now, where we can, with 100% confidence, let a customer know that almost irrespective of the sector that they operate in, we're going to be able to find a way of being able to install our technology so that it's ready for when they reopen again, which is great.
Yeah, and actually, when you think about it, now is the perfect time to install the technology, assuming
Right. For some venues, it's ideal because they have nobody going in at the moment. So, and all we need is really for somebody to unlock the door. Provided the door's unlocked, that's all we really need. Everything else we can get done by ourselves. So, yeah, for some of our customers, this is exactly the right time to get the project work done.
Yeah, and just take your typical movie theater. How long would an install take?
Yeah, so typical movie theater with 500 seats, say, we can get that done in a day.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. Pretty quick. The flooring type usually determines how fast we're able to work. So most movie theaters have their floors carpeted. So it's pretty easy for us to be able to lift the carpet, lay the loop, and then seal the carpet down. If we're working in venues that have tiled floors, which is really common in the west of the US, it can take some time to grind out the grout in between the tiles. And that's what we normally do: grind the grout, lay the wire in between, and then re-grout over the top. So a tiled floor venue with a tiled floor, that's typically a 2-day installation. But if you're a carpeted venue, no more than 500 people, it's just a day. We're in and out really fast.
Oh, so there are companies like Gaper that help develop, build, and scale products, especially for startups. It sounds like you're past the startup mode, and you already are taking advantage. It sounds like you said you do development in India, right?
Yeah, so all of our web development is done in India. Yeah, and then we have 2 consumer products that we've brought to market over the last 5 years. It's funny you say we're past startup. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like we are very much still startup. We're doing 2 installation projects a week, so I suppose you could argue that we're now a small business. But I don't know. It's kind of fun being known as a startup. I think it gives permission for a lot of people in the team to really think creatively and with agility. So no, I think from a company psychology perspective, we definitely still consider ourselves a startup.
Interesting. So how important do you think it will be for startups like yourself to have companies like Gaper that, they take care of the development and you take care of your core technology?
Oh, crucial. We, as a small business, and as a genuine startup, the first, couple of years, if we hadn't had partners like Gaper, there's no way we would have been able to manage the payroll of bringing our own teams on. So there is something really important about the flexibility, the financial flexibility of being able to work with a third party like Gaper, for example. I think there's also something about our ability as a small company to attract the talent that we need to be able to grow properly. Whereas for an organization like yours, well connected, We know that we know we have more confidence that we're giving a project to the right team of people, and that you'll be able to make sure that the team working on the project is the right team of people. So, yeah, I mean, if it wasn't important before, and I think it was, absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I think even more so now. Well, James, I want to thank you for your time today. This has been fascinating. Really cool technology. I'm going to go to loopfinder.com and check out, who has it in my neighborhood.
Have a look there. Take a look at OTOjOY.com too. We have a couple of really cool animated videos that show exactly how the technology works. So take a look at those too.
I will. Thank you. So have a great day. And I know even though it's later there, it's the middle of, that's still your morning, right?
Other way around. So it's the morning for you. It is nearly 6 p.m. for me. I'm going to go get dinner.
I know, but it's actually still your morning from a work standpoint, right?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I guess I'm only in the middle of my day.
Yeah, you're in the middle of your day having dinner.
Right.
And I just had breakfast, so. All right, well, have a great day.
Good to talk to you. Thanks, Mark.
Bye.